So again, welcome to my friend, Katherine Aud, who was good enough to come today and share with us her high impact home strategies. Over to you, Katherine.
Evening, everyone. My name is Katherine Aud, and like Maura said, we are talking about some strategies to help your little ones at home. And I kind of took it from the view of helping them get ready for some of the learning that they'll have to do in school, as far as literacy, numbers, and then social emotional skills. And with that, I want to introduce you to myself, both personally and professionally. And so in the eyes of children, I believe that this is what they think I look like. And apparently, I like to wear my hair across one eye because it was a repetitive drawing that came up of me. In this photo, I thought, wow, which one am I? Hopefully the one on the left. But in all seriousness, my name is Katherine, and I am born and raised here in San Diego, went to school all in San Diego Unified, been married for 25 years. This is my husband, Alex. We have one daughter also named Alex. She's in 11th grade, and she goes to San Diego Unified High School as well. This is a photo of her in 9th grade when she was a homecoming baroness, which was a pretty awesome time before the shutdown happened. Professionally, I want to say I began my career in high school in education. I attended Patrick Henry High School, and they had a program called ROP, Child Development. And that is my first experience with children in a preschool setting. So I did that through my 11th and 12th grade years, then went to City College. And during that time, I became a teacher's assistant in San Diego Unified. Then I added jobs on as the years went on. So I became a noon duty assistant, a library aide, a guidance attendance assistant. When 6 to 6 came out, I became the site supervisor of 6 to 6. Then graduated from San Diego State with my teaching credential, became a 6th grade teacher, did that for a couple of years, and then transitioned to an English learner support teacher. I also did simultaneous half-time in-school resource, a peer coach and a staff developer for K-6, working with a lot of students who were acquiring English as a second language. And then I shifted down to kindergarten, and I taught TKK in a SEI English classroom, meaning students who have limited English. And I did that for 6 years. And then my final 4 years in TKK, I opened a dual immersion program where I taught in Spanish for 90% of the day and 10% in English to both Spanish speakers and English speakers. And then most recently, 5 years ago, I transitioned to the central office here at the district. And I worked in the family and community engagement department, youth advocacy department, integrated youth services department. And now my most current position is restorative justice practices. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what my experience has been. I'm like a nosy person, so I like to know everything about people who are speaking or talking. And so hopefully it's given you a good picture of who I am. And so our time tonight together, I've put some things I thought would be important to discuss around developing early literacy skills, the number sense, and also social emotional development. And we'll go kind of in this order across this menu. And what I did was, as I was thinking about, well, what would I want to know as a parent of a little one, so I can do things at home to get them prepared for when they come to school. And so I went back through my files of pictures and photos of students and everything I kind of did in my classroom. It was actually made me really miss my classroom. But I'm going to show you through pictures kind of some of the things that that can help you prepare your little ones. So, and these are birth to 5, right? So even the littlest ones. A lot of times they come to school and they say, oh, my kid doesn't know how to read yet. And in all actuality, we start with environmental print at the earliest of ages. And so students are already knowing how to read. And here's some few examples. When you're driving in the car and you pass this beautiful sign right here, guaranteed the kids are going to yell, Mom, I want some Happy Meal or a chicken nuggets, right? So they can recognize through symbols meanings of things, whether it's food or a store or a stop sign, or if you think you're smart and say, oh, they're closed, but they really do recognize signs like this that say it's open. And so that's one of the very first things you can do. But the next thing is to expose them to as many books as you can. In my classroom, we started with your favorite books, reading books with friends, sharing them with friends. Why are they your favorite? What do you like about it? And here is my friend's daughter, who's at the littlest. I don't believe she's even 2 years old yet, but pointing to things in pictures, getting them to turn pages. So these are all kiddos who just have a love for reading, even though technically they might not know the actual words on the page yet, right? So in choosing books, I've linked a book list from the Anti-Defamation League on here that do include what I refer to as mirrors and windows. You give books give children the chance to look through a mirror and see themselves, or look through a window and see others. And so you want your book to be culturally responsive, inclusive of all cultures, and inclusive of all abilities. All are welcome. It's kind of like a sample of a culturally responsive and inclusive book. Another thing you can look for, especially at the very, very young ages, or some ages where maybe their speech and language development is a little behind their chronological age, is looking for rhyme and repetition. So Hop on Pop is another example, or The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I know my daughter was reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar because the repetition of he ate one, and then he ate another, then he ate some more, and then, naming all of the things that this caterpillar ate through. Brown Bear, What Do You See is another very, very excellent repetitious book that has colors and rhyme and is very easy to be memorized. And then I also encourage that you get books in your native language, that you read to them in whatever language is natural to you to read in, and that you pass that on to your children. That reading in your native language will actually improve their ability to read in another language. So I'm a big dual immersion advocate for teaching in multiple languages and acquiring as many languages as you can. So whatever language, if they're going to a babysitter and they speak a different language, allow them to read in that native language. And then favorite characters and favorite topics are another way to get kids interested in books. If you don't know the author Mo Willems, he's amazing. His books and illustrations are absolutely fantastic. So this is Pigeon, and he has a lot of books like Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. This is him freaking out that he wants to drive the bus. Clifford is another all-time fave. And then these are some other characters from Mo Willems, Piggy and Elephant. And a lot of his have a lot of stories. Nuffle Bunny is a great one that gets left at the laundromat and has to go back and try to find them. But the ADL book list has a ton of categorized books. So that's another excellent resource for that. And so it's not just all of the language and the vocabulary and all of the things that we think about, but these are some skills that are measured when they get to kindergarten. It's called concepts of print. And there's much more to this than what I have here, but for the younger kids, book awareness is knowing how to hold the book so that it's facing right side up, not upside down. The pictures are right side up, and that there's a front and then the back of the book, and then turning those pages. So teaching them those skills is a great way to get them ready for reading. And then you go from book awareness to print awareness. So actually pointing to like pictures in the book, and then that they recognize that writing actually carries meaning. So pointing to the words, where are the pictures? Where are the words? And then this is the trickiest one, is that in English, it's left to right and top to bottom. In Spanish, the same, but if you get into like Arabic, then you're wanting to go the opposite direction. And so whatever direction, and then the return sweep is when there's multiple lines. So we start off with just one line, turn the page, just one line, turn the page, and it's usually very, very repetitive. But if you have two lines, typically around first grade, then you need that return sweep. So you actually swipe across and then swipe across. And even if they have no idea what those words say, getting them to kind of move their finger is very, very helpful to get them prepared. So that's my spiel on books, and you'll see books again, and then books again in math, and then again in SEL, just because stories carry a great sense of learning from them on multiple levels. Another thing is learning songs, rhymes, and finger plays. So Pete the Cat is another fave book, and it comes with a free song. And so I think I sang all day, every day. Humpty Dumpty, like all of the nursery rhymes, Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars, singing your kids to sleep, rocking them and, rocking them, comforting them, consoling them. You can always do nursery rhymes. And I did click another link, or linked another more nursery rhymes. I think I took you to Starfall on that one, if not on Finger Plays, but just some websites that kind of give you other ideas. But again, huge advocate for rhymes in your own primary language. So whatever that language is, in Spanish, bin bon, like any little song or rhyme that is kind of passed on traditionally, I encourage you to do that. And then another thing that not only builds language and gets them prepared for literacy, but also works on like the fine motor skills of like the itsy bitsy spider, this little piggy stayed home, this little piggy wee all the way home, right? Patty cake, and then I threw in some new ones like Baby Shark, and that was like past my time, but any little movement kind of helps with that motor and language skill as well. And then also link some more finger plays. Any little counting down and counting up, isolating fingers are all really good. Snapping is another one. Kids have a really tricky time doing that. And then a lot of times I get asked, around letters and sounds, and my kid doesn't know their letters, they don't know their sounds, they can't write their name, and that's all perfectly fine. They will develop this on their own and in their own time and in their own way, right? And so there is a very big difference between phonemic awareness and phonics. And so phonemic awareness is the ability to hear sounds. So I encourage you to play games like cat starts like k. What else can you think of that starts like k, right? Car. Or if they don't have the words, like does car sound like cat? Does it start the same? So all of that is like no letters in writing, no books. It's just all through sound. And I have a rule. Another teacher taught me it's in the ear and across the tongue. So just getting sounds in the ear and across the tongue, getting them to produce those sounds. But phonics, on the other hand, is when you actually attach the sound to written print. So the example in this picture, my little Kevin over here, has the actual letter A in writing. And then he has pictures that all start with the letter A. And obviously these are in Spanish, but avión, it starts with that sound. And so that's considered phonics, because the minute we introduce the letter A to the sound or a or A in English, then it becomes phonics. So that's like a huge difference between phonemic awareness and phonics. I just encourage you to sing the ABCs and then practice some shapes. So my little buddy Omar here, so proud of his writing, needs some more fine motor work on his shapes. And so if you're going to practice any shapes, I would say practice for English and Spanish. Circles, sticks, and then like the curve as in the letter E or S, curves like that. And reversals are totally fine. We have parents that freak out, like my kids writing it backwards, and that's completely fine. And always accept approximations, even if it is way wrong. You say, yes, great job. You encourage them, because it's over time that they build that confidence, right? And if we're constantly saying, no, it's not like that, it's like this, then it kind of makes them feel like not very confident. And so although, this idea that you go to school, you're in kindergarten, you're all of a sudden just going to start writing, the evolution of a child's writing is actually over time. And you'll see the various stages that they go through. This is like a very popular image you'll probably see at parent-teacher conferences. But the scribble stage is basically starting anywhere on the page and just kind of making any kind of mark on there. And then you can see here where we talked about the progression of left to right. You can see that this now is kind of resembling that we're writing left to right, or they start to make mock letters, or like something that kind of appears to be something that looks like a letter. And then they start writing actual letters in a string, and they'll start grouping letters together. They'll start drawing pictures and then labeling it with like a letter. And then it kind of progresses from there to where they can write an actual sentence. So that's kind of how writing develops. And writing does not match your chronological age. And I'm going to keep saying that often. A lot of times the assumption is once they reach a particular age, they have to have a certain ability, and that's not always accurate. It's actually very, very different depending on each student. They're all extremely develop on their own pace, right? To each their own. So this was actually an example of writing progress, right? Or drawing. Some folks might call it drawing. This was on the same day with all, check these faces. Yes, they were all kindergarten. And it was the same exact lesson. So you can see my little guy here is at a very beginning stage when looking at his drawings. And then Kevin over here has a little bit more difficulty seeing the person, right? And making those circle shapes. Camila over here has a little bit better grasp because she's added some hair, like on her own, maybe an outfit. And then Sabrina, she has also added some hairs and some fingers. Her fingers are circles versus the sticks over here. And then Angelica, who has added quite a few other things as well, a flower and some grass and a sun. But ultimately the lesson was just, it's called Mat Man, and it's like a song, and it kind of helps you draw a person so that has eyes, a face, a nose, a body, hands and arms and legs. And then some people don't consider drawing writing, right? But we did have writing folders. So what I would encourage you to do is introduce your children to writing as early as possible. And when I mean writing, I paper, crayons, markers, pencils, whiteboards, like anything that can just not your walls or furniture, right? Like just anything that you can give them some way. You can see that he is at a very, very beginning stage of drawing or writing. Everett over here is holding his pen in a very difficult position, but he's still producing. And then I know these are a little small, but you can see somebody's name starting to develop. And then we have some more advanced writing where they're labeling, just like in that kind of advancement stages of writing. And then again, getting them on a line, getting them in order. You can see the stage where he's kind of chunking some letters. I believe they're all A's and a couple B's in there. And then you can see how she has exactly a way better control of where she's placing and also the shape of the letters. So again, both kindergarten, both probably on the same day, and again, developing at their own pace. Language literacy is all about vocabulary. So as a parent, I encourage you to take them and provide them experiences where they can develop that language, especially around precise vocabulary. So here's a little field trip to SeaWorld. Look at the shark, so naming it a shark. Look at its fins, look at its tail. It has gills. Like, don't shy away, especially if you have a child with some language delays. I would encourage you to develop that language as much as you can and to use the exact precise vocabulary. Down here, we got our little science lesson where we have the snails and their antennas and their shell and their tail and their, and again, with our fish, you can see that providing them with like a diagram where they can actually add, this is in Spanish, but it says cola, tail, and scales, and gills. Any questions around literacy so far? I don't believe we're
Nothing
remembering.
into chat right
Okay,
now.
perfect.
Does anybody, I guess we could pause for 1 second and just, is there anybody who wants to ask anything about what we've just heard? Otherwise, let's keep going.
Keep going. All right, so just again, finger plays and rhymes, books, writing. Another thing I forgot to mention is a lot of times they say, I don't know if my child's left-handed or right-handed. And so the best thing you can do is you can just hold out, and it doesn't have to be a pen or a marker or pencil. It could be a book, it could be food, it could be any item. You hold it in their midline, so in the center of their body, and then it's typically the hand they grab it with. And sometimes they grab it with the left, and then the next time you do it, because you're so anxious and you want to know, they'll grab it with their right, and then their left and their right. So over time, you'll start to notice that they gravitate towards a particular side. and but don't force it also. Cutting is also another skill that's much needed that you can practice at home. Get your junk mail and, you know, throw it out on the floor and give the kids some scissors and let them cut away. And then once they get good, and there's adaptive scissors as well where you can squeeze. And that's another like muscle you can definitely develop. Draw a line on a paper and have them try to cut it, draw a squiggle and try to have them cut it. So those are all great ways to develop their fine motor skills, especially around cutting. I am a literacy specialist, so I did notice that my presentation was heavy literacy. And then I was like, ooh, what do we do for math? And what do we do for social emotional learning? But they are equally as important. I just didn't go as deep into them as I did with literacy. I got all excited about literacy, sorry. Again, I said I'd revisit, but books. And these are just pictures. I just went on Google and said math books, and I was trying to find some of my favorite. Anything, this first one is around counting and numbers. So the more they hear the repetition of counting, the easier it gets. And then in the middle, I did shapes. Shapes are really big in some of the standards in kindergarten, first grade, shapes that make up our world. So going on a walk with your kids, like what shape is that door? Can you find a circle? Look around. So some of these books are really great, like Color Zoo and Color Farm, for finding shapes in our world. And you can see when you search math books, Color Zoo comes up a lot. And then this one I just found for preschool. Colors are really beneficial to learn, especially for math. And the reason for that is because sorting and patterns are a huge concept to develop. And it's really the concept of same and different. Like, how is this the same? And how are these different? And then with patterns, it was like, well, what repeats? Or how can you make it repeat? But the attributes are color, shape, size, or category. So these little manipulatives I would find at Target, Dollar Tree, or sometimes even at the grocery store. I think these are like unicorns, and some have wings, some don't have wings, some have heads up and some have their heads down. And then obviously they're colorful. So you can sort by color, you can sort by a category. The bears, I had like big bears, medium-sized bears, and small bears. So you can sort by different shaped bears. And then this was a really easy thing to do, is just make different colors and first to have them match it and then to have them create one. This is so funny. This little guy, Devin, is in 10th grade and I saw him the other day. Counting. So there are a couple of things that I would suggest. Again, the rhymes and finger plays, and in whatever language is your native language. Cinco Elefantes is a really cute song. I put the link on there, but basically they balance on a spider web, a huge elephant. So, and then they come like, come on, bring some more, or like 1, 2, buckle my shoe. And that's just kind of getting them to hear the numbers, the vocabulary. But some of the content that they need to master is sequential counting. So counting from 1 to 10. Which is pretty easy, but once you get from 10 to 20, it's a little bit more tricky because you got the 12, the 11, and the 12 in there, and so that little chunk of number counting makes it a little hard. But by the end of kinder, they're supposed to be able to sequentially count from 1 to 100. But I feel like after they get to 20, it kind of is so repetitive that it's very easy. They just need to learn 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And to help with that is by skip counting. So skip counting is skipping numbers in between. So if you skip count by fives, it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. And so make it into a song, make it into a jumping, put some physicality in there. So kinesthetic learners, skip counting by tens, and then 25 will be very helpful when you're counting money, right? So quarters is also a life skill. So not just because we want to learn this for school, but these are skills that we want our kids to have. Another thing is developing number sense. And so it's one thing to be able to count, but it's another thing to answer the question, how many, and to match one-to-one. So in this picture, you can see the counters, and the question is, how many counters do you have? And then they have to be able to write the number. So that numbers actually represent a quantity. So like how many? And you can do this all the time at home with pick your toys up. How many toys did you pick up? Let's count them while we put them away in the toy chest, right? You have two, and I'm stuck on chicken nuggets today. You have 2 chicken nuggets left to eat. So, right, like eat 1 chicken nugget, right? Eat 2 chicken nuggets. So anything at home where you can do counting would be fantastic. And then Cherie over here has where she's tracing numbers. So if they can't do the number by themselves, you can absolutely, I use a highlighter. You have a highlighter, and then as closely as they can to that line, get those numbers on the paper. Shapes again, like in the books, shapes make up our world. So being able to identify and describe shapes, or describe objects in their environment using shapes, or create and compose shapes. So a very fantastic thing, and I'm not encouraging you to buy this because they're actually super expensive. They do sell it at Target and Lakeshore, but these are magnetic. I think they're called magnetiles, and they're in different shapes. And I can tell you that hours and hours and hours of time kids spent using these magnetiles. It's just a really wonderful toy to, they kind of just stick together and you can build creations much like Legos, another very, very expensive toy or tool. But anything that can get them to use their fine motor skills and to use shapes to create other shapes, but then also being able to identify what they are. So is that a heart shape, a star shape, a diamond, a triangle, any of those kind of shapes. And just in our everyday vocabulary, again, promoting some of these concepts of length, either who's taller, who's shorter, if it's longer or wider, like could it fit? Maybe it's not wide enough or long enough, and actually using that vocabulary. Another thing is more or less, who has more, who has less, and heavier and lighter. So those are all concepts in math that help support learning. And you can use a scale or anything that kind of flip-flops to be like, that's heavier. And then using that language, the glue is heavier than the pencil, and using like comparative language. Those are math concepts. Any questions around math concepts? Pause for a second.
Nothing.
I haven't seen anything in the chat.
Okay, perfect. So here's our last section around social emotional learning. And I feel it's probably one of the most important. Maura and I were just talking about it before we started, especially because of the pandemic, the social interactions. When I got a degree in child development, and when I thought of social emotional learning, I thought, oh, it has to be Piaget, right? Like I have to look up Piaget and I have to tell these parents about Piaget because there's the cognitive development that happens, especially birth to 2 years. Well, they say birth to 5, really, the first 5 years of your brain development and how important that is. But he's actually labeled these kind of sections of birth to 2 years as the sensory motor, where they're using their senses and motor skills, items known by use. So that's why everything is in their mouth. Everything is getting tasted or licked or smelled or touched. Like, don't touch that. You hear that a lot. It's because within a birth to 2 years is where they're learning through their senses. This is another thing that I was like, wow, when you play peekaboo, it's actually what's called object permanence is learned. So they actually think you literally disappear when you go behind your hand. So there's that stage. And then you get into the 2 to 6 year olds, which is where kind of kinder and preschool live, where it's pre-operational. They have some symbolic thinking, language is used, but it's always about me, right? But they're learning to use their imagination, and it kind of learns that there's other people here that we kind of become friends with. And then you go into the 7-11 year olds, where there's concrete operational, where they actually have logic that they're using, rational interpretations of things. And you have the numbers, the ideas, the classifications become more sophisticated. And then 12 years old to adulthood, you have that formal operational thinking where you can think abstractly or hypothetical ideas, or you get into like the social moral issues or the politics. So, you know, if you're excited about Piaget as I am, but it's really good to understand the reasons why, especially birth to 2 year olds, everything's in their mouth or in their touching it or feeling it. And again, books and more books, the best way to help, especially if you want to teach a particular social skill, emotions or feelings, glad monster, sad monster, or mama, Mrs. Mama, especially if you're having like separation anxiety, excuse me. When Sophie gets angry, really, really angry, or your moods, you want to teach the way you feel, the way you act, how are you feeling, or stories about like if you feel worried. And then here are some other ones about, you know, being honest, or wild feeling, enemy pie. One of my favorites was Mean Jean, the recess queen. Just thinking of around school, but it's like a social story to try to teach correct behaviors when you're in different situations. And when I think of social emotional learning, and I've linked this website or this curriculum, I think of Second Step, which is what I used in our classroom, and the district, I believe, has the adoption of kindergarten through TK through 8th grade. But I use the early learning curriculum, which goes through kind of these areas or these units. We feel feelings in our bodies, or we have strong feelings, naming those feelings, managing especially disappointments when you don't get what you want, managing anger, and also managing waiting, which is a very huge thing for our youngest learners, is to teach them how to wait in line, take your turn, you need to wait, we're not next, right? Like waiting is a very, very difficult thing. But again, naming those emotions and teaching them more than just I'm happy or I'm sad or I'm angry, but like maybe you're excited, maybe you're afraid, maybe you feel guilty. So giving them, again, as much vocabulary as you can. And then again, Second Step, when you get into the early curriculum was intended for preschools, but then As you get into the elementary grades, you do some units on fair ways to play. And these are things you can obviously do at home, especially if you have multiple children. So if they have siblings, playing together, trading, taking turns. My favorite thing or advice to parents is to utilize a timer. So a timer is key. Like in kindergarten, it was key. It was your time is up. That sound means you are now going to trade and take turns. Also, remember Piaget's stages of like, it's all about me. Now it's about having fun with friends, that there are actually other people in our room that we need to consider. So having fun with friends, and also a skill to learn is like inviting others to play, and how difficult that is to navigate in COVID times, especially outdoors with a mask on or without a mask. So joining in while others are playing is also another skill that is brings about a lot of anxiety in some kids. Like, I want to go play, but I don't know how to say it, or do I just go over there? So sometimes parents have to come in and help facilitate, like, hey, Warner wants to play. Can she come? And can she ride down the slide with you? And so kind of initiating that is really good. Saying the problem and thinking of solutions. So this problem solution, I didn't get a turn. So what happens when you don't get a turn? What do you think you can do? What can you say? And so building all of that like teachable language is really good. And then also speaking up, like, don't just go cry in the corner. Come over here and actually tell the person why you're sad or what they did. So these are like friendship skills and problem solving. And you can do that at home, especially between siblings, but also with neighborhood kids or random folks at the park. And then another part of Piaget's stage is like that dramatic play, like dress up, right? Like pretending to be others. Mr. Potato Head, you know, like the action figures of actual dramatic play, and then giving them experiences. We went, and I think this was Tecolote Canyon, to see an actual snake, and then using something to represent that. So like this idea of like, you know, there are things that can represent in our play. I can dress up to be a doctor. I can dress up to be you know, a policeman or a fireman, and all of that dramatic play. It's really good to build their social emotional well-being. And so with that, this is my contact information. That's my phone number at work. It goes to a voicemail, and then, but it gives me an email, so I can contact you right back. And this was me on my birthday this past June at Yosemite, and I thought I was not going to make it up to this waterfall, but I did. So again, there's my daughter and I, and thank you for having us. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer. If not, feel free to reach out to my contact